Good evening, everybody. At least I hope it's everybody. It's really, really good to see a number of you in front of me and a good number joining us elsewhere as well, able to watch. It may well be that others join us through the evening, which is absolutely fine, but welcome to Madryn's annual Vestry meeting. Thank you ever so much for making the effort to come and be here with us this evening, so that we can look back on actually the last 2 years to a certain extent. That's what we need to do because we weren't able to hold this meeting last year. Look back on the last 2 years and see all of God's faithfulness to us in that time, to be a little bit accountable to each other and to the wider society as to the way we've dealt with things like our finance as well, but mostly to look on God's faithfulness and together to pray and look to the future with whatever that holds. So thank you for coming and joining us this evening. Just to explain how this is working, firstly, I hope all the technology holds up. We'll see. But I'm going to try to share various things for you to see. And you should already have received either by post or by email some of the papers and documents that we need for this evening. But I'm going to try to put those up on the screen for you. And those of you who are part of this meeting on Zoom are able to take a full part in the meeting as if you were here present. And those of you who are here but are also on the electoral roll, as we have it, are able to vote in the things we need to vote for, that kind of thing. But what's being broadcast and shown to others, those who are just watching online and might be looking to comment or anything like that, unfortunately, unless you're actually in the Zoom meeting, you're not able to do that. There may be some who seek to join us. I don't think there's anyone here at the moment, but there may be some who seek to join us just by telephone, because that's possible as well. So if anybody dials in, we may well hear from them as well. But our hope very much is that we can, rather than just have an hour or a little bit more of me just talking at you, because who on earth wants that? I mean, just turn off now if that's what's going to happen. That we're going to hear from each other, to hear contributions from people, and think about this last year or so together and pray for the future together. So that is the plan. What I'm going to do, just as a start then, is to pray. Let's pause and let's pray, ready for our meeting together this evening. Gweddiwn. Anol Dduw, diolch yn i ti am dy bresenoldeb gyda ni heno. Diolch am dy gymorth, dy help, dy gariad, a dy nerth y ti mewn ni I gyd. Heavenly Father, we thank you that as we gather across the internet this evening, you are here with us. In each place where we are connecting from, in each place where we are watching from, you are here amongst us, and you're joining us together with bonds and ties that are far greater than any technological advancement. And so we thank you that you unite us, you call us together into one family to be your church, your body, and to share our life together and to serve you together with that life in the place where you call us to live. So we thank you for this area which Madryn serves. Thank you for each of the towns and villages, the communities, each and every home, each and every person covered by this area. And we ask that our whole community, even at this very moment, would know your blessing upon them. That something would be in our hearts and our minds, speaking to us of your goodness, your grace, and your love to us. For that is the prayer for our life as your church, that we might be agents and bearers of your grace and mercy. So help us to keep that at the very forefront of our thinking and praying this evening. We ask in Jesus' precious name. Amen. Amen. I've asked those who are attending on Zoom to keep themselves muted by and large through the meeting. That's for one main reason, which is because sometimes you get a bit of feedback if people's volumes are not right and that kind of thing. But that's not to say that you can't interrupt to join in. Please do. If you need to say something, if you want to say something and you can't catch our attention in any way, please do interrupt drop in and say that you want to share something. That would be really good. That's exactly what we want. So please do. But otherwise, you might just hear my voice for a fair bit. Good. What I'd like to show you now, just to bring up on the screen in front of you, you probably won't be able to see this very clearly just because of kind of quality of signal, but hopefully you've received in the post or by email a copy of this, which are our papers for this evening. This is the cover page of that. I've got the physical copies here as well. You're very welcome to have that to hand or have it up on the email with you as well, and that will guide us through this evening. There are things in there that are for you to have read and to know about, but also there are some other documents that you've received as well, and we'll share those through the evening. So that's what we need. And just to let you know that I'll be following through the agenda that you can see there, but probably again not read because of the clarity. But we'll be following through that agenda. And hopefully getting through all of it and covering all of it over the course of this evening. We'll just have to see how we go. Brilliant. The first thing to do, having prayed, is to open God's word together, open the scriptures together. But I don't want to do much by way of a huge long Bible reading tonight. What I wanted simply to do was to share a verse that we've heard a number of times over the course of this last year. It's been in my heart and hopefully in our hearts together through the year. And it was the code that we used to get into the meeting this evening. If you needed a passcode, you'll have entered in Romans 15:13. And right back at the start of lockdown, I remember sharing this verse with you, a song about it, all that kind of stuff. And it's just such a wonderful, powerful verse. And so I'd like to read it to you again now. It says, "May the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace as you trust in him, so that you may overflow with hope by the power of the Holy Spirit." May the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace as you trust in him, so that you may overflow with hope by the power of the Holy Spirit. There's some images in there, some language that Paul uses as he writes there to the church in Rome, which are just so abundant, aren't they? Filling you and overflowing and power. These are not kind of half-hearted descriptions of something. This is something that's abundant, isn't it? It's full of life, full of life. And what is it that we're to be filled with and to overflow with and to have power? Well, we're to be filled with joy and peace. I don't know if we'd look back on 2020 and say that joy and peace have been the predominant emotions and feelings of these last 12 or 30 months or so. I really don't think they probably have been. And yet, of course, we've seen aspects of that, haven't we? We've seen that come up. And in some places, we have seen it abundantly. We've seen lots of joy and hope in the parts of our society, in the parts of our world even, where remarkable things have been being done to care for and look after each other. Joy and peace has flowed out amongst us. And hope as well. We might overflow with hope, Paul says. And again, we wouldn't necessarily look at 2020 as being a year filled with hope. We might talk about perhaps the opposite of hope a bit more, a bit of downheartedness, even a bit of despair. Oh my goodness, is this ever going to end? Are we ever going to come out of this? What is the world going to be like? All of those big, big questions, which very easily overwhelm us because they're important questions. But hope has been there too. Because again, as we have seen good things happening in our community and in our society, there has been hope that maybe some of the changes that are happening, some of the things that are being forced upon us might be good things that we look to a brighter future with. But then the last bit of the verse, by the power of the Holy Spirit, gives us a key that this is not a joy and peace and hope as we would normally expect it in the world. That this is by the power of the Holy Spirit that we experience these things. God's Holy Spirit, the Spirit of God himself, who hovered over the waters at creation, was there at the beginning of all things. And it is the God of hope who gives us, by the power of his Spirit, these things in abundance. It's him who fills us with joy and peace and hope. Those things are present in our world. We don't have a monopoly on good things. But the purity of them, the totality of them, comes from God himself. And so what we have as a church have to offer what we as the churches of Madryn and the church together as Madryn, what we as Christian people in this area have is to cling to the hope that God offers for ourselves, but also to receive it, not just a little bit, but abundantly, so that it can flow out from us into our society and community as well. That was our heart. That's the heart of the church and always has been, but it was our heart before the pandemic arrived. It's been our heart during the pandemic, and it's not going to be changed after the pandemic or whatever happens next comes along. This is the heart of the church. This is God's heart for us and for what we can share with our world. So I hope, using one of those words, I hope that we haven't lost any of that. We will, of course, have had dips and peaks, low moments and high moments, but I hope that as God's church, in spite of all that we've had to endure and go through and seek to do differently, we haven't lost that hope, that joy and that peace, and certainly that power to fulfill that calling that God has placed on our lives, that we might be people of joy, that we might be people who exude peace, that we might be filled with hope, and we might offer it through Jesus Christ to our communities. That's our hope and our prayer. Super. There may well be a number of people who intended to be here tonight but can't be here for a variety of reasons. And that's absolutely fine. We know this is not as in normal years, and there would be many others with us normally. But part of the responsibility of this meeting is that we record any apologies from people who can't be with us. So if there is anybody who has specifically said they hoped to be here or would have been here if they could but are unable to be, could you please let me know of them? No one has specifically said that to me. There are some who have said they intend to come but haven't turned up yet. But at the third part of our minutes here, you'll see that we're meant to be receiving apologies of our agenda. We're meant to be receiving apologies. So if anybody has heard apologies from anybody, please do speak now. Let me know who that is. Unmute yourselves and say if anybody has heard specifically of apologies. You're welcome to do so. I'll just give a moment for that to happen, possibly. And I'm not hearing anybody. So while I fiddle around here and try and stop fiddling around, that's a bit better. We can see a bit better, can't we? I'm not hearing any apologies from anybody. That's absolutely fine. Thank you nonetheless. So Jackie, there are no apologies to record, but we do recognise that there are many people around our church community who would long to be here but seemingly aren't able to be. I'm just going to check that I'm not being told anything in the chat to the contrary to that. No, not indeed. Good. Okay. Thank you very much. So the next thing we have to do then is we have to look at the minutes of our previous meeting. So I'm just going to try to pull those up for us as well, so that we can see that we've had a copy of those. These were distributed. Of course, this was our 2019 meeting. Would you believe it's that long ago since we had a meeting? Sorry, bear with me a moment while I pull these up. It's 2 years since we had an anniversary meeting, and they were shared amongst the churches in the months soon after the anniversary meeting. So they were put up. I've also put them around in our in the email that's gone out to people. So if you haven't had a chance to see them, I hope you took that opportunity earlier. I'm now struggling to bring those up, but we'll see. Is it going to work? It's working hard with me, this computer now. But you may have had, here we go, you may have had the minutes. This is where you all lose patience with me and I lose patience with the computer. No, I think that's there. Good. I'm just going to show you what they would have looked like. There you go. Again, they're here on the screen, and we can just scroll through them. And in a moment I'll ask you to approve them. They're not really there for you to read now, and we're not going to take time over this because we received these 2 years ago, but for you to see that we did produce minutes from our previous meeting 2 years ago. Thank you to Jackie for doing them. I've only been able to bring up the English version on the screen just for space. I hope that's okay, but I know they were translated. thank you to Jackie for doing that. If anybody, as they read these at any point over the last year or so, didn't have the opportunity to offer any corrections, I don't think there were any. I looked through them thoroughly myself and I was happy with them. In just a moment, we'll seek to receive them. I'm just quickly scrolling through them so you can see all the things we talked about. And don't worry, we're not going to be here until midnight saying exactly the same stuff tonight. We're going to try to go through at a bit more of a pace. But there were we looked at our finances, as we're going to do in just a moment, and then we made some elections. We appointed some people to various roles. We heard some reports and different aspects of our church life together, and then we talked about our mission and our ministry and some things that we were doing together and seeking to do. So there was lots that we talked about. I'm going to take those off the screen so that they're slightly less distracting, and I'm going to invite anybody who would like to say anything about that. If anybody wants to offer any corrections, that's great. Otherwise, the first person I see waving at me, I'm going to assume that you're proposing that we receive the minutes. So would someone like to wave at me for that purpose? That would be great. I see no waving. Oh, Joe, I'm seeing you wave, and I'm seeing Helen waving. I'm going to take that officially as proposing and seconding that we received those minutes from 2 years ago. If anybody wants to speak against that, now's your opportunity. And you're not going to, are you? Because you're all ever so lovely and kind. And it would be a bit fussy if we did, but that's good. If anybody wants to, you're welcome to unmute yourself and do so. Jackie's delighted because she wrote them. Good. Can I ask you then, by whatever means you have, either waving at us or raising a digital hand, just to vote whether you would like to receive those minutes. In favour of receiving those minutes, please do say. Showing now. I'm seeing lots of hands going up, which is great. That's brilliant. Thank you very much indeed. So we've received those minutes. How exciting. This is how 21st century Madryn is now, everybody. Are you not deeply excited? No? Okay, just me then. Matters arising. I've looked through these. That's the next item on our agenda. I've looked through those last minutes, and there was nothing really that arose then that doesn't otherwise come up in our agenda tonight or need much description because it's such old news. But if there is anything that anybody would like to speak more about, Suzanne, your hand is raised. Is that because you were voting, or are you wanting to speak? You're not wanting to speak, that's fine. In which case you have the opportunity to lower your hand. There we go, I'll do that for you, that's good. Bro, if anybody wants to bring up any matters arising from 2 years ago, now's your opportunity. Again, wave at us or unmute yourselves and speak. Otherwise, we'll just carry on. Isn't this fun? No, not at all. That's good. So I see no specific matters arising, which is absolutely fine. Now then comes the time for our annual reports, and so there are a few of these that we would normally hear. I'll just show you there that we'd normally hear a report from myself, from our church wardens, and then from those who attended the synods and the Darson conference. Well, the good news is that we can reduce that a bit because there wasn't a Darson conference last year, so we won't be hearing a Darson conference report, and the synods through the last year have all but entirely been limited just to ministerial leaders. So they haven't been the open synods that we used to having, and there hasn't been much by way of that to discuss then either. So we're going to limit it now as well because we only have one church warden. Helen is going to share her report in just a minute, but before she does, I just wanted to look back with you over the last year. And I've not written a huge long report. And so it's not there for you to read anywhere. And I'm not going to take ages to do this either because there's too much to say, isn't there? There's far too much to say, especially if we were to look back over the last 2 years and try to do what we should have done last year. But actually, there is one particularly poignant thing that I want to remember at this point from just over a year ago. Just over a year ago, Donald Roberts died, didn't he? And we remember just how terribly sad it was, how quickly he got ill, and how soon after that, even though we had hoped that maybe we would have him with us for a bit longer, that illness took hold and he died. And I think it was back in January and February that we had, around about January, February, that we had his funeral in Aberdaron. Donald had been the most wonderful servant of the churches of this area in such a specific, particular way. In his way, in the gentle Donald way that he served the churches of Bryn Croes and Botunog and Llangonadal and others around this area as well. But particularly there, he had offered a ministry that lived out that verse from Romans chapter 15. There was a joy of the gospel in the way that Donald lived his life, but also a deep-seated peace in knowing that he was loved by God. And there was always hope as well, wasn't there? There was always hope from him that there was something good coming next, that God was about to do something good and wonderful next. I remember listening at the door outside Bottonog Church to a couple of Donald's talks because I was arriving for the end of the service and I didn't want to burst in on him while he was talking because it would disturb him, but just listening to him telling the most wonderful stories and bringing God out of those stories into our lives as well. We miss him deeply. What he was doing in Bryn Croes hasn't finished, isn't ended, of course, but what he had started to do there and was achieving there in bringing some new, fresh life into that church was utterly wonderful. So we're deeply grateful to God for the time that we had with Donald and for the ministry that he offered amongst us. Soon after that, it really wasn't very long after that, we found ourselves, we were starting to take our Lent services together, weren't we? We were travelling around our various churches. We had some of our visiting speakers come and share with us, and then the lockdown arrived upon us, and we had to bring a pause to our services and a lot of what we were doing. And I know that we focused quite quickly, our desire was to focus quite quickly on making sure that we were in touch with as many people as possible and checking how people were doing and checking that everyone had everything they needed, because there was a bit of a focus at that time that as restrictions came upon us, some people would be so isolated that they wouldn't be able to get the essentials that they needed. And it was really lovely to see that even though we were quite quick and quite hot on that and responded quite rapidly to it, very, very few people were looking for any help or assistance whatsoever, because the community around them had got there straight away. Neighbours and members of the community were offering to shop and deliver prescriptions, and all of that was happening straight away. And wonderfully as well, members of our churches were part of doing that. It was a really good thing to see. And then we started to seek to share something of what we would normally do on a Sunday, and we started to do that through a couple of different ways online. And we've changed it so much through the year, and I'm sorry for all the chopping and changing, but we've been really hoping as much as possible to take every ounce of opportunity that working online brought by opening it up to many people. What we're ending up doing now through doing Zoom services at the time that started felt just a little bit closed off, that it was just for a few of us to gather together, those who could do that. So we tried to do things that were a bit more open and a bit more easily shared, and then we've tinkered with it probably too much through the course of the year, and it's been quite fun for Sarah and myself. Sarah might disagree with the word fun, to be learning how to use this technology in public, and you've watched all of our mistakes as well, but that's just normal, isn't it? There would have been those mistakes were we in person as well. But thank you to everybody who has contributed to our life of worship together over this last year. Huge thanks to Sarah for everything that she has done, from her prayer shed through to hosting Cafe Cotled online and everything in between. She's been an absolute stalwart of our worship offerings through this last year. So thank you to her hugely for that, and for many other things as well. But also to those of you who have sent in videos and music at various points, and have done readings and things online for us, have prayed with us, have been acting in some of the stories that we've told through the school, through Agor Llyfr Open the Book. We've told some Bible stories through videos that way, which has been quite fun. Sophia is still desperately worried that there really are lions down in the basement of St David's Church, and that if ever Daddy goes there, the lions might eat him, when we told the story of Daniel in the lion's den. There's been some real creativity there, and it's been wonderful. So thank you to everyone who's contributed to that. But of course, as well as that, there's been a wider story going on in our community, hasn't there? A much more bigger and all-encompassing story than what we've been able to achieve and offer. And that's been a story of deep deep sadness in the midst of those moments of joy and peace that I mentioned before. We've seen grief, not just grief through loss of people to COVID-19, but also grief through loss of people in many other ways that we've not been able to mourn in quite the same way. And the funeral ministry that we've been able to offer has been vastly reduced and pared back, and services have been very short and very few people able to be there, and our ability to visit and offer pastoral care to grieving families has been deliberately restricted. And it's been very hard to see that, but it's also been wonderful to see again how our community and our church community has responded to that. I've heard lots of stories of people saying that they knew they were being prayed for. People telling me that they have been offering to pray for neighbours and relatives who've been going through a hard time, and other people telling me that they know that people from the church are praying for them. And so there's a wonderful thing there in the midst of all this difficulty and hardship, that the church, in spite of not being able to do everything we want to, and I'm sure there are things you wish we had done in this last year that we weren't able to do and didn't get to do, there have been things, ways in which we've been able to be the church that have been truly wonderful and deeply appreciated by people as well. So I'm very, very grateful for that. We had the opportunity towards the end of the summer to open for some services and to do that in a different way. We had two churches open for personal prayer for several weeks on different mornings, and then we had some services, didn't we, in St David's as well. Thank you to those who came to those, but also thank you to those who said that it wasn't right for them to come. But for those who came, thank you for the way that you complied with all the regulations we needed to put upon you, and coped with the strangeness and the quietness, the silence, the lack of music. It's been such a strange year, but again, a year full of opportunity and creativity. Not necessarily, again, the creativity that we would have wanted, but I'm grateful to all of you for the part you've played in it. We've had to continue with things like our MAC meetings and other bits of administration. Edith has been, and I'll say this again in a moment, an incredible help keeping our finances going whilst doing the most remarkably important job. I think, is it COVID Queen? Is that your name at the BBC? Edith is the COVID Queen, and the lady of the 2-metre ruler. I think that's your other name, isn't it? Keeping our BBC Wales running for us in the background, whilst also keeping our finances and on top of that. So thank you to Edith for that. Thank you to Howell for chairing our MAC meetings online, and for other ways in which things like that have been happening. So many thank yous to say, but most of all I want to say thank you that we are still here, and that we are ready for the opportunity that presents itself to us soon to be the church in a new way in this place. We spent a bit of time and the conversation stalled a bit, thinking and praying about what we need to be ready for as things reopen themselves to us as opportunities. We didn't get as deep into that conversation as we would want to, for reasons that will come up in a moment, but I know that has been something that's been on your hearts and your minds and in your prayers. And I share those prayers with you, and I share those hopes with you, that whilst we're not going to find one day a rule is passed that says we're allowed to do everything again, and so we go back and do exactly the same as we used to in exactly the same way, and nothing is any different. That quite simply is not going to be the case. But I know that amongst Madryn there is a heart and a prayer that we would find the new way, find the new thing, find the new way to hold things in balance and be the church as we arrive into whatever this future holds for us. Not a comprehensive report at all, but hopefully a reflection of just how strange and unusual a year it's been, but also how good it's been to see the church be the church in so many new and different ways. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. Helen, I'd like to give you the opportunity, if you wouldn't mind, to speak to us as well. So Helen, I'm going to just bring you up on screen. Are you happy with that? Is that okay?
Yes, it is. Sadly, I'll have to look at myself, won't I? Just hold.
You will, I'm afraid.
Page of notes in front. That's perfect now. I can't see myself. That's good. Thank
Helen,
you.
thank you. As our vicar's warden over this last 2 years, indeed, it's a pleasure to welcome you to share your reflections on this time as well, Helen.
Thank you. First one as well. And had I known at the last AVM that we had in person that I was going to be vicar's warden, I might have listened more carefully. So apologies if I get it wrong. Apologies because a lot of it will be repeating what Richard said, but perhaps in a different way. Very strange, isn't it, reflecting back on the past year or even 2 years since we were able to meet together. We have gained lots and we have lost lots. We've gained some people and we've lost some people. We've gained some because we're now online, and we've lost others because we're now online. And it has been a difficult time. And I want to thank you so, so much for everything that everybody in every church is doing to keep Madryn part of our communities and as a visible presence of Jesus in our communities. Because even when we can't meet together, we're still being that. When we can meet together, I'm conscious of the number of people it takes to keep our churches open. And the number of people who are there to set up, to clean, to keep the places safe, to play the organ, to administer the practicalities of services, to keep things going. The number of people who were involved in activities. And when I started listing them, I decided I couldn't possibly thank everybody. A, because I'm bound to miss people out, but B, because you want to get away before the end of the evening and not be here until bedtime. But there are so many tasks and so many teams. But in particular, I do want to thank the pastoral team, because if ever there was a year we needed a pastoral team, this has been it. Thank you so much for all that you've done to help keep people connected and being looked after and cared for. It has meant a huge amount to people. And I'm conscious that some of our pastoral team are still phoning people weekly. Where are we? 13 months on, and have done that faithfully. As Richard says, thanks also to Howell and to Edith, to Jackie, to Joe. It must have been a rough year for you, Joe, not being able to be a focal minister in Llandudwen, and we look forward to the day when you can be again. And of course, Donald was on my list as well. And I want to thank Bryn Croes, the members there, for the way that you have enveloped Catherine in your love and care and kept each other going through this difficult time. Diolch yn fawr iawn I chi gyd. I need to say a thank you on your behalf to Sarah and to Richard. Sarah, we've said it once, but we may as well say it again. You may only have been with us for just under 3 years, but you've made a huge impact and you will be missed enormously. But we're grateful that for the moment you're still with us. Yeah, we long for the day for your sake when you can go, but we're glad for our sake that you're around a bit longer. Richard, you came as 2 and you leave us as 4. You came with, I can't remember how many cats. Are you leaving with the same number, but different ones? Oh, never mind, it doesn't matter. You came to a group of churches, and I hope you feel that you're leaving a ministry area, that we have become a group together and that we work together. That's certainly how I feel it in MAC meetings and when I talk to people in our churches. Richard, thank you so much for this past year especially. Without your technical skills, we would have been lost. Not many of us, if any, can match you, however much you put yourself down for those times when it goes slightly wrong. And never mind those times when it goes very wrong, but we hugely appreciate the time and energy and the skills that you've brought to that. And then we have to say, and that's only the technical bit. Then there's the pastoral care and the teaching and the leading us in worship and the enabling us to grow in God. Thank you for all of those things and so much more. And to both you and Sarah, we want to say a big thank you also to your families, because we're aware that they make huge sacrifices in enabling you to do what you do for us, and it is much appreciated. Please pass that on to them. I said to Richard that I was going to include the next thing, and that's that he wasn't to be coy. There's no point in being coy. He knows we'll give him a leaving gift. We've given one to Sarah. I'm not sure she's going to get another one, but there we are. But we will send information round about a leaving gift for Richard, because he is with us now for less than 4 weeks. And so we need to get on with that. Richard's last Sunday with us will be the 16th of May. And we will say a proper goodbye at that time. I'm conscious that the playwright Oscar Wilde wrote in The Importance of Being Earnest, to lose one parent may be regarded as a misfortune, to lose both looks like carelessness. So quite what he would say about us as a ministry area, I dread to think. But there we are, that's the place that we're in. We are trying to replace at least one of them. I'm not sure that we'll get another curate, but Howell and I have already had meetings with Archdeacon Andrew Jones, and the profile is well underway that will be sent to people who are interested in the area. And we would really appreciate your prayers for us as we do that, as we look to replace Richard and Sarah, if you can indeed replace them, but as we look to find the right people to take over from them. I want to end with a verse that appeared in my my daily Bible reading plan today, and I thought it was absolutely perfect, because I want us to think of it and pray it for Richard and for Sarah, but also for ourselves. And it comes in Deuteronomy chapter 31, and this is verse 8. Ond mae'r arglwydd ei hun yn mynd o'ch blaen chi. Bydd ei gyda chi, fydd ei byth yn eich siomi chi, nac yn troi ei gefn arnoch chi. Peidiwch bod ag ofn na phanicio. The Lord himself goes before you and will be with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you. Don't be afraid. Don't be discouraged.
Helen, thank you so very, very much indeed for that. Sorry, I just disappeared off screen to turn the light on. Thank you so very, very much indeed for that, and for that verse. That's really lovely to hear, and to be reminded of the truth that speaks to us. Thank you for what you've remembered, and all that you've said in that report. I'm really, really grateful to you. Thank you. This would also be an appropriate moment, I think, just to let a slightly wider audience know of what Helen's been doing the last 3 days. I'm not going to ask you to say, Helen, unless you want to. So if I get this wrong, wave at me. Excuse me. But over quite a long period of time, there have been some conversations going on in the background between myself and Helen and other people, and then more recently in the last few months, and very recently, Helen was asked, or was asking the MAC, the MAC were asked whether we would support Helen in an application to be considered for ordination within Bangor Diocese, and I'm very pleased to say that the MAC wholeheartedly supported that, and with great joy sent a message off to those who needed to hear it, saying that we thoroughly support her being considered for that. And Helen has spent the last 3 days on Zoom, finishing just a couple of hours ago, I think. Helen, is that right? The last 3 days on Zoom, undergoing conversations and interviews and questions as part of the discerning process, the consideration process by the Church in Wales for the possibility of her being ordained. We don't know the result of that. I know my opinions on the result of that, so let's wait and see what happens. But Helen, can we pray for you? Firstly, that you recover some energy after those last 3 days, but secondly, for what the future may hold for you and locally for us with you as well. So let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you that you place a calling on each and every one of us. we are together called to be your church, and you give us different things to do. And none are more important than the other, none are more special than the other. Each and every one of us has our treasured and valued place. And so we thank you that Helen has been discerning a development, a possible development in what that place in your church might be for her. And thank you for the example that sets to each of us, that we should constantly be saying to you, God, what is it that you have for me to do? How can I serve you? How can I be obedient to you this day? Thank you for Helen's obedience in asking that question. And thank you for our church's response in considering your calling upon her life. And we pray that she would, after 3 days of being questioned, that she would this evening sleep well. Thank you so much that you have given her the grace to be with us this evening after all of that. Pray that she would sleep well, rest well, and in the period of waiting now to discover what the result of that discernment process is, that you would give her peace, and that when the answer comes, you would give her peace in abundance. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Helen, bless you. Thank you again for what you've shared, and thank you so much for, like I say, for showing to us that that process of discerning a possible change in your calling in God's church. I'll just bring this up again to show you where we are in the agenda. So we've heard a report from me of sorts. We've heard a wonderful report from Helen. With no People's Warden in place, there's no other report to hear. And as I mentioned, the synods, the deanery conferences, as it were, that have taken place over this last year haven't been as they normally would, and so there's nothing to report from them again, nor was there a Darson conference. So those reports we'll look forward to hearing next year what those might be. And that takes us to item 7 in our agenda, which is our financial report. There's a chance that some of you will see both of us. Edith, I'm going to add you to the screen for a moment, and I'm not sure whether this is going to mean that both of us are visible or just one of us in turn, but we'll see. Edith, thank you. Welcome to you. Really, really good to have you here with us this evening, and thank you for all the work that you have put in to preparing our financial reports. I just want to explain, before I hand over to you to say anything that you've got prepared to say, I just want to explain to you what we have this evening in front of us. So you should have received in the post or by email. I'm just going to change this ever so slightly. Hold on just a moment. You should have received this in the post. No, not that. That's not the one. Hold on. Let's get rid of that and bring the right one up. That was close, wasn't it? Oh, goodness. What you should have received in the post, and while I try and scrabble and find it, I'll tell you what it is the annual return, the financial annual return for Madryn for the year 2020. It's a report as is submitted off to the Church in Wales for them to gather together and submit as part of their wider charity response. Here it is. I have now found it, and I can bring it up in front of you. This is what I'm asking you to look at in the background. This is the one. It looks like this. I hope you can see that. It says annual financial return at the top, and it's an overview of the financial picture for Madryn through the last year. Now, we would normally have had a meeting last year which told you how 2019 went, and you could compare 2020 with 2019, but of course we never looked at 2019, so the numbers really are very difficult for us to understand, but they're also very difficult for us to understand because things have changed so much through this last year, and we haven't conducted our finances in the normal way, and we're going to talk about that in just a moment. Edith, I'll ask you to speak, but that's what you need to have in front of you. But you might also have in front of you, not in front of you, I will also be able to share with you a bit more detail on some of those figures in a bit as well, and we'll talk in a bit more detail about some of those finances, just so that we can see the full picture. Edith, I'm going to hand over to you for whatever you want to say, and then we'll try to fill in the gaps and answer any questions as they come up. Is that okay?
Absolutely, yes, thank you. Good evening, everybody. I just wanted to go through a couple of headlines, really, rather than talk you through line by line, because that's never the most exciting thing to do. But as both Richard and Helen have alluded to, 2020 was a challenging year, and I think we'll find that the finances reflect that. It's the financial picture is no different, I'm afraid. So I think we should start with calling it as it is. There were no Sunday service income. That the usual with the weekly reports that I process, they weren't there, which also means, of course, that we weren't able to claim the tax on any income received there. Very few occasional offices, weddings, non-existent. That just didn't happen, and those are typically revenue generating or income generating for our funds. No visitors to the area equally for the same reasons, but we still had expenditure on the normal things, utilities, churchyards and insurance, for example. And I think it's also fair to say that we ended 2019 in not a particularly healthy position, but it wasn't a particularly strong position from which to start what turned out to be a very, very difficult year. So that's the bad news. The good news is that contributions, donations, direct giving have continued to come in, and that really has kept us afloat. So thank you to everybody who has played a part in that. There's also been a large number of sort of one-off donations as well, which have really made a huge difference. I just wanted to call out a couple of big areas of expenditure, the largest of which is the contribution to the Bangor Diocese Fund. So it's £48,500 in a normal year would be very hard to find. In a pandemic year, that made it doubly difficult, but we just about managed to do that. And I'm really pleased to be able to say that, because it did look at one point that we wouldn't be able to meet our full financial contribution. There was quite a lot of expenditure as well linked to the Nevin reordering project, which I'm sure Richard will mention later. We are hoping to be able to reclaim a significant part, if not all of that, which will put us on a much stronger financial footing for this current year. So the expenditure was last year. We are hoping to recoup a significant amount of that in this financial year. And then on the other hand, the investments that we have in various funds, they've performed better than they have done in previous years, which clearly we were very pleased about. So the overall picture is that we are just about breaking even at the end of 2020. It's not a particularly strong position to end the year on, but I'm afraid it is what it is. So we have to make the best of what clearly has been a bad financial situation for everybody, the church included. I also wanted to just do a quick look ahead to 2021. I think that also is going to be a challenging year. So I think it's only fair to put that out there at this point to say, yes, we're looking back at two particularly difficult years. 21 will be challenging, but we will obviously do our best to make things work on that front. So I'm not going to go into any further detail, but I am happy to take any questions you have, with the caveat that I may not necessarily have access to all the detail underneath those headline figures that you have. I'll answer what I can. What I can't, I'll happily take away and report back to you via email or whichever way you prefer. So at that point, Richard, I'll hand back over to you if I may.
Hold on, there we go. I've unmuted myself. See, I do it, Anna Georgina. It's not just you; it's me as well. Thank you, Edith, for that. That's brilliant. And yes, we do need to add just a little bit of detail into that as well, don't we? And the first thing I think that we do need to say is that whilst we were able to meet our Bishop's Ministry Fund contribution, that £48,500 last year, which was remarkable, and I remember writing in December just how wonderful it was that we were able to do that, and how God had clearly been at work in our ability to do that. One of the main things we need to recognise is that we did that by having had the amount that we were asked to contribute effectively reduced for us. So the amount that we actually gave and were asked for was less than we had anticipated being asked for at the start of the year, because the representative body of the Church in Wales, which is the kind of the legal charitable entity of the provincial church, the national church in Wales, dipped very heavily into its reserves and offered a reduction in the amount expected from each diocese to give to it to meet national costs, and each diocese was able to pass that on to each ministry area, each parish, each church from there, and that amounted to millions of pounds across the church in Wales. And so the amount that we actually contributed, whilst it met our requirement in full, wasn't the full amount that we were expecting to have to provide in the beginning of the year. And something similar but different is happening through 2021. So there is going to be a similar style and level of provision made by the Church in Wales to the diocese to share out to the ministry areas, but quite the way in which that happens and takes place is still being finalised. There is some money that Bangor have held back in order to share where it is needed and is necessary. So as the year goes on, we start the year very concerned. Goodness, we're in April now, but we start the year very concerned as to what our ability is going to be to repeat what happened in 2020 in 2021. But we don't do so without any hope that might happen. But the main thing to say, and I do say it every year, is that what each of us should be doing anyway, regardless of financial situation. If we were pouring with money everywhere, we should be thinking about this, and if we're down to brass tacks, we should be thinking about this. Each and every one of us should at least every year be thinking, have my circumstances changed? How should I now be changing my contribution, my giving, my gift to the church in order for it to reflect the situation I'm in? And for some people, and again I always say this, that will mean that they reach at the start of a year and say, I need to reduce what I give because my circumstances have changed. And I'm not asking anyone who needs to reduce their giving not to do so. If you need to, please do. We don't want you to do what is not appropriate and to go beyond what is necessary and right. But there will be people who maybe haven't done that review and reconsideration of their giving to the church in recent years, and I'd ask you to do that again. I would also ask that if through 2020 you are aware that because of the lack of services and opportunities to make normal donations and contributions to the church, you didn't give what you would have wanted to, just because the years passed doesn't mean that you can't amend that in any way, and you're very, very welcome through all the different means that we have. And I'll share them if you want me to make those contributions through this year. So we're grateful to the RB for the support they offered, and the diocese as well. We're also deeply grateful to every single person who continues week in, month out to contribute to the life of Pro Madryn. There's also some aspects of what Edith has shared. Actually, I will pause at that point and see if anybody wants to ask any questions before I just go into a little bit of detail to clear a couple of little bits up on that. Is there anybody who wants to ask a question? Anybody with their eyes still open? Oh, I'm seeing a hand up. Who am I seeing? I'm seeing Will with a hand up. Will, if you'd like to, I won't bring you up on screen, but feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question. That'd be great.
Well, it's a simple question and probably a simple answer, but if you look at the payments on the halfway down general parish expenses, 20,700 whatever, compared on the right hand column, which I take prior year take to be comparison with last year, if that's right, 11,000. So I just wondered what lay behind this big increase.
Thank you, Will, very much for that. And actually, we've had a little bit of questioning that ourselves since this report got produced. I'm just going to bring that up on screen for everyone to see. This is a copy of the numbers that you can see on the annual financial return for expenditure. And Will, what I think you're referring to is this here under general parish expenses. There's £20,000 expended under general parish expenses in 2020 compared with 11,000 in 2019. Edith, I think the answer to that is we're not totally sure, But the reason behind the lack of total clarity on that is that underneath each of those main categories as they're presented there are a whole host of subcategories as we report them. And so to identify what's been put into those categories is a job that maybe we do now have to do, to see if some things that were in previous years put under a different category have been put in a certain category in 2020, so that we can't actually make a like-for-like comparison. But one of the things, Edith, I think you were saying, I'll just bring you up as well if you're happy to,
Yep.
is that there's a chance that some of the things that we needed to purchase and to get in order to respond to the crisis will have gone in there. Now that's not going to have been £9,000 worth.
No,
Don't worry,
it's
I've not
not.
bought
No, it's
£9,000
not.
of
I know you haven't.
computer kit and cameras and that kind of stuff. But there are things that we have had to spend money on that will have appeared in there. But I think, Edith, well, do you want to say a little more?
Yes, of course. No, I'm happy to do that. It's a valid question. I wish I had the answer right in front of me. I don't, but that is one I'm definitely going to take away, because it's nearly double, and that doesn't quite add up. The equipment that Richard is referring to is the technical kit that's required to hold the online meetings and so on. But just to reassure you, he hasn't spent £9,000 on microphones and cameras. But I'll take that away, if I may, and investigate.
If you're happy for me to spend £9,000
No,
on
I'm
microphones
not.
and cameras,
No.
bother. That would have been quite fun.
The invoices come to me.
Thank you. For clarity, what we're asked to do this evening is to receive this financial report. If we were needing to be of official charity status, were our income to be a lot higher than it is on a regular basis, or possibly in the next couple of years as Charity Commission law changes, what all we have to do at the moment is just receive this report, and the report itself is kind of the property of the MAC rather than the AVM, and that can still be slightly amended and submitted, and that's not going to be submitted till the end of June, I think, Edith, is that right?
Correct, yes.
So what's presented to you this evening, if it is amended in any way, we will share with you once again by means of emailing or posting out to everybody for you to see any changes that have taken place. But this is our best effort so far at drawing 2020 together. And there are things like that we do need to just double check on.
Yeah.
But the whole picture, the total picture with a proviso that I'm about to share with you, the baseline numbers are right, because it does all tally. The system that Edith uses tallies with the bank balances. There's no missing £9,000 anywhere. And that will be independently examined, as we're going to mention in just a moment. Any other questions before I just share a little bit more, just one more little bit of detail in that? I'm not seeing any other hands go up. Thank you, Will, for asking that. That's brilliant. Shows that someone reads it. Isn't that exciting, Edith? Someone reads the annual return. That's brilliant. Thank you for doing it. Super. What I'm going to do then is I'm just going to bring some more of those details up on screen for you to see very briefly. So again, this is what you will have received by email or by post. The annual financial return that's there. That's the income page, and you'll see there is a significant drop this year on 2019 in terms of planned giving income and loose collection income, something in the region of £15,000 less received through the course of the year by way of donations to us, and that's as a result of not having services and people having the opportunity to do that. Again, that's just to indicate the level of reduction of our income, and that may well be entirely appropriate, because along with this pandemic has come financial implications for people. So it's not a criticism by any means. It's for you to be aware that that's the amount less that we received in 2020 than we received in 2019, and that is a significant amount less received. You will also see at the very bottom, I'll just highlight it for you, a £20,000 figure there under other income. That's a very round figure, so it should be explained, and it is explained. That was a transfer from some investments that we had that the MAC approved through the course of the year to make sure that we could make the payments we needed to. Basically, some of the investments that we hold, we sold some of them in order to receive that, to make those payments. That effectively made up the loss of income. So it still shows a significant expenditure. Edith, if that's not right, tell me that's not right. But I think that is right. You'll also notice that the and again, Edith, correct me if I'm wrong, that Bishop's Ministry Fund 48,500 expenditure there, so that is what we gave, but not all of that was for 2020, because like I say, the amount asked of us was reduced. What that includes is a hangover from 2019, when we didn't make our last payment for 2019 within the calendar year. So you'll notice there at the end of 2019 we had only made £28,800 of BMF payments. Some of the 48.5 that you see over here was for 2019.
Correct.
And so, if again, Edith, is that right?
That's absolutely right. It didn't happen in 2019. We didn't have the funds, but we were able to make that payment in January 2020 after the sale of the investments you mentioned. So from that 20,000, 10,000 went into the Nevin reordering fund and 10 went into the general fund.
Thank you. Exactly that. Brilliant. So that's good explaining. Thank you for that. Again, because I now can't see you, because I've had to bring up another screen. If you want to ask questions on that, do unmute yourselves and ask, and I will pause. But there's a couple more things just to mention briefly. So again, that's the third part of that annual return that shows the total of it. What you'll notice, and perhaps the most important thing to highlight, as I'll try and get rid of that off my screen, is a negative amount there at the bottom, £5,405. There it is at the bottom. That won't go away, never mind. 5,405. What that implies is that at the end of 2020, in terms of our unrestricted funds, the monies we have available to us to spend, we had a negative balance. That should not be the case. There is a reason for that. I'm just going to bring this off screen so you can see my face again to explain that. There is a reason for that, and Edith alluded to it earlier. So as part of the Nevin reordering project that we have been undertaking, there have been significant expenditure on things like architects' fees and on mechanical and electrical engineering fees, and on surveys, that kind of stuff, professional fees that have gone into producing the project up to the point where we currently stand, and those needed to be paid. We had some money into the Nevin reordering project fund from gifts from people, direct giving to that, and some of that transfer, as Edith mentioned. But what we've spent is more than we had. And we had, from the very beginning, permission to use money from what's known as the Cadio Fund. It's a fund held by the Church in Wales on our behalf from the church in Cadio, from when it was closed decades ago, that was going to be spent on this reordering project. And that amounts to something in the region of £140,000. And we had the opportunity to access that to pay some of these fees and to pay for some of the project. The process by which we apply to get access to that money to spend it is incredibly slow, and it's made even slower when I send an email asking for it to a person who has left their role and is no longer responsible for that, which is not good, especially when that person, that's not picked up on by anybody, and so we sat waiting for it. The basic point is that something in the region of £17,000 has been claimed from that Cadio fund and will be returned to our predominantly our general fund. Some of it will go into the Nevin reordering fund and repopulate that back to a healthy position, and the rest of it will go back into our general fund, from which we paid those fees because we didn't have the money in the Nevin reordering fund to do so. If that makes sense, well done. But that is basically the point, and what I can share with you. Do jump in if you want to ask a question. The point is that we don't have that money in our bank accounts, but we do have it as money that we are entitled to and responsible for, and we have permission to receive it. We just haven't received it within the calendar year in which we made that expenditure. Is that okay? And that will be fully identified in the annual return as it is submitted. Edith, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think you've covered all of that. Thank you.
That's good. I am going to do just one little bit more just to show you. So that's what we were showing just now. This shows you that rather precarious position that creates for us, in that in our general fund at the end of 2020 in the bank, that was what we had. That wasn't a very good position to be in. That's not the position we're in now, but that was our actual financial position at the end of the year. And here you'll see that £5,000 and a bit, which is the deficit within the specific Nevin reordering fund that we need to repopulate from KJO, and the rest then will go back into here and bring that to a much healthier, something like 10 or £11,000, Edith, if that's right. Please do say, but that's my understanding about that. And also, lastly, just to show you the state of our churchyard funds, this is restricted money that we can't use for any other purpose than for the maintenance of these churchyards. That's the situation that those churchyards were in at the end of 2020. One thing just to highlight here, and I'll show it as highlight it for Tidwaliog. Tidwaliog's churchyard has been superbly supported over the last couple of years by that community, and we're really grateful to them and to Suzanne for the enormous work she's done there. An enormous amount of money came in 2 years ago to support that churchyard, and similarly through 2020. The reason that is as low as that is that not all of it got banked in 2020, and a significant amount has gone in 2021. So that is a fair bit higher than £381. But you'll see that our other churchyards are in various degrees of health or otherwise. And that is going to be a continuing, ongoing item for the MAC to attend to. I don't want to go into much more detail on that now, but you're welcome to ask. Lastly, I want to show you this. So these are the big numbers, aren't they? This is the money that is held for us by the representative body, the Church in Wales, by the province for us. And this shows you the state of play for those at the end of 2020. This information we did not have when the annual financial return was being produced. And that report that is in front of you does not include the increases in value that are here, that are represented here, compared with the end of 2019. That is being added into the annual return, and that is what will be submitted. And Edith, I think you might be able to tell us what those increases are. But what you will notice particularly is that I mentioned £140,000 previously for the KJO fund. Well, that went very, very low through 2020. But at the end of 2020, that has come right back up again. And the final year valuation is actually the highest it has been whilst we've known about it. And albeit we've got to take some money out of that £17,000 is going to come out of it. But the points to make would be, sorry, there we go, that's the one I'm talking about. The point to make would be that the £154,000 there, the KJO fund, if that value stays, which it is always possible that it will go up and go down, then the work that we have done preparing for the Nevin project has not actually dented the total amount available in that fund, which is good news. And there are other funds there that you can see which have similarly gone up. Edith, do you want to just very briefly tell us the increases that we've seen there?
I can run through them very quickly. The figures I've got include a combined endowment and income fund. So the KDO one, which is there top of the list, that's gone up by a huge £10,000. The next one down, Nevin, that's gone up by 745. Llangwynadl up by 513. Bryn Croes, similar amount, 524. Llanestyn has gone up over £700. Nevin, the next one down, has gone up by 128, and the Tidwaliog one has gone up by £41. So the overall increase, if you like, amounts to £12,000, which is not bad.
It really isn't bad. And very lastly, I am going to share with you a couple more pages, and these are things that we would normally present to you. This is a note which says not accounted for by our treasurer, because these are funds held for us by the Bangladesh Trust, and so they don't appear on our annual financial return until that is a bit more consolidated than it currently is. So there are two sets of funds there held for us, an unrestricted amount of about £1,500 and a churchyard restricted amount of about £2,700. So there is some wiggle room there for us to do some work with churchyards. Also, just to show you, these are the funds held by the Charities Investment Fund on our behalf. This is as has been reported to us through this year. Again, they don't feature in the annual return because the intention with these is that these monies are going to be added into these monies held for us by the Bangladesh Trust, and when all that's consolidated, we'll have a much better picture of it. So there's some funds there valued and some more funds there valued for you. They are significant amounts of money, and they don't say, oh well, all's okay then, we can just spend that money. No, not at all, because a significant part of that is restricted for various uses, but not all of it. But what it does say to us is that there are some opportunities for us still to make payments that we might not otherwise have been able to. And there's work for the MAC to do still on that. I'm sorry that's so unbelievably dull and boring, but it's right and proper that we give that due attention. Does anybody want to ask anything on that before we move on? I'm not seeing anybody, and thank you for it. Sorry this has taken so long. We will carry on past this now. What I would like now, based upon that, recognising that there is some corrections and additions to make to that, and that will be presented to the MAC and then shared with you. Are you happy in its present form to receive that Treasurer's report, that annual financial report? Can I ask someone just to show? Joe, I'm seeing you doing so. And is anybody else willing to suggest that we receive that? Can anybody see a hand going up anywhere? I'm seeing Helen's hand go up. Thank you. Again, with those provisos that I mentioned about Vicky, thank you also. If you could just wave your hand to say that you're happy to receive that, I'd be grateful. Thank you. And if anybody doesn't want to, could you now wave your hand at us? Thank you. I'm not seeing. Oh, I am seeing some hands go up. If you are putting your hand up in order to say that you don't want to, could you unmute yourself just to make that clear? No, all of those hands have gone down, so that's good. That was just a slight delay in that coming through. Thank you. So we receive that report, Edith. I'm really, really grateful to you. I'm going to try to go through this next bit a significant amount quicker than that, but it's right to have given it the time that we have. I'm grateful for it. So just one moment while I come out of that a second and do this. Good, there we go. Yes, right. Good. We have come to the part of the evening when we need to make some appointments, elect and appoint some people to various aspects of our church life. And the first, and perhaps, no, I'm going to say most important. I'm not going to say most important. The first of those is a church warden. And you remember that the situation regarding church wardens has changed as a result of us becoming a ministry area. As a united parish, a single parish in this area, we have two church wardens, a vicar's warden and a people's warden. For the last 2 years, that has been Helen as my vicar's warden, but we have had a vacancy for a people's warden. And we have the opportunity now, I hope, to rectify that and to have someone take on the role of people's warden. I hear that has been some conversation in the background. So if there is anybody who would like to nominate someone for that, can I ask you to either wave your hand to show that, or to unmute yourself to say so? That would be great. Susan, I'm seeing you waving at me.
Yes. Byswn ni licio enwebu Mandy Williams, Brincres, please. I'd like to nominate Mandy.
Thank you very much. Mandy, I know that you are present in the meeting, but we can't at the moment see or hear you, which is fine. It would be great if we could possibly at least hear you, if you could unmute yourself to say that you're willing to be nominated in that way. I don't know if you're hearing this and able to do that. Mandy, if you are, it would be really good. Oh, I'm hearing a phone ringing. No.
I have spoken to Mandy and she did say that she was willing.
Now I think, Mandy, are you now unmuted? You
yes,
are.
I'm sorry,
Thank
Richard.
you.
I just received a couple of phone calls which I've declined in the middle
Bless you.
of
Thank you very much.
meeting. Sorry about that.
Not at all. Mandy, are you happy to receive that, to be nominated in that way by Suzanne?
Yes, I am. Susan and I, we had a chat the other day, and she says she's happy to help with any queries that I might have. So yes, I'm happy to try that out.
Thank you very, very much indeed. I'm particularly delighted to have a suggestion and a nomination for People's Warden. Are there any others? I would be surprised, but are there any others? I'm not seeing or hearing anybody else. Do shout at me if you want to. That's good. Having then had Mandy nominated by Suzanne, I think it would be good practice to have someone to second that nomination. So if someone again could wave at me to do so, I'd be delighted. Anna Georgina, thank you very much. And a round of applause from Sarah. I like that too. That's good. So Mandy has been nominated for People's Warden. Can I ask you if you would like to vote in favour of that, to make some kind of indication that we can see? Either to wave at me or to raise a digital hand. I'm seeing every hand go up with gusto. Mandy, my goodness, you are so popular. That's good. I'm absolutely delighted. Oh, there's hearts going up here as well. Mandy, thank you so much. You are duly elected and appointed as our People's Warden for Madryn, and now we'll tell you what that involves. No, I hope you know already. That is super. I'm really grateful. Mandy, thank you.
Diolch, Mandy.
Wonderful. I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time on each of these, so let's go through them. I'll just bring this one up again for you to see. So the Ministry Area Council consists of some people out by virtue of their office, and until both of us leave, that's myself and Sarah, the People's Warden as just elected, so that's Mandy, and the Vicar's Warden to be appointed, well, to be reappointed for the time being. Helen, you remain in that role. I hope that's okay. You haven't told me not, so that's going to be so. But Helen's also there as a licensed lay evangelist anyway, so that role is doubly hers. And also, Joe, you're there as our reader. We also have the opportunity to nominate representatives from each of our congregations to be there, and you have now in front of you on the screen those who were reappointed in 2020. The election in 2019, or the appointments in 2019, were carried over in 2020, and it would be great to hear from anybody that they know that those names are willing to continue. If not, then we might need to deputise this to the MAC to make those appointments. But my understanding is, and please tell me if I'm wrong, that all of those names there are willing to continue. Does anybody know that that is not the case? Please unmute yourself to tell me so. I can't see anybody doing so. With that, and of course the problem here is that we don't necessarily have everybody on that list present and able to say so. What I'm going to suggest that we do is that we make make these appointments. We elect these people into their places, unless any other suggestions are made, on the understanding that if they are not happy to continue in their role, that they can say so, and we will replace them by due process. Does anybody have any other suggestions for people who could be in those roles instead of those who have filled them for the last 2 years? I'm very happy to hear them if so. I'm not seeing or hearing anybody. So those who are listed there before you, so I will name them. So Anne Hall, Nancy Saville, Bill Callahan, Wyn Hughes, Suzanne Griffith, John Tierney, Edwin Evans, Howell Parry Smith, and then Joe and Helen, who are already there in other roles, to be MAC representatives for the various congregations there, to be deputised for by, respectively, Doreen Cartwright, Pat Haley, Toby Kenyon, Yola Pritchard, Fred Hampson, Renee Evans, Janet Parkinson, Jackie Hughes-Jones, and Joan Bakewell. Can I gather those together as a provisional collection of nominations of re-elections, and ask for you to show your support for those if you do support them? Could you show, please? I'm seeing some hands go up. I'm seeing some hands go up and come down, so I think so. That's good, thank you. I hope Jackie and Sarah, you're looking through that too. Does anybody not want to support that? You're very welcome to do so just by raising a hand. I'm not seeing any hands at that point, so that's good. Anybody particularly, because I didn't see every hand, anybody wanting particularly to register an abstention for that? Again, I'm not seeing, so if you want to raise your hand and keep it up, that's good. I'm not seeing any. That's good. So what we will do is we will check with each of those who've not been able to be here this evening that they are happy to continue in that way, and assuming that they are, then that will be the case. And if they're not, then we will by a proper process reappoint and re-elect into those positions. I'm going to move this on as well to our Synod and Darson Conference representatives. I'm guessing something might happen in a moment here that means that we have to do this at a later date. But there are a couple of people who have automatic right to represent us at both Darson Conference and our Synod meetings, and those are Joe and Helen, by virtue of being a reader and a licensed lay evangelist in our midst. We don't have anybody in a position to fill the third of those, but we do have the opportunity for any three people to be nominated and appointed by ourselves to attend Darson Conference and our Synod meetings for us. Would anybody like to put any names forward for that? You may even put your own name forward. It is possible. If you would like to, can I ask you to do so now? I'm seeing no hands up, no one's unmuting, and I've got to be honest,
fel arfer dwi'n mynd iddyn nhw beth bynnag, felly mynd fodlon. I usually go to them, so if the meeting is happy for me to continue.
Howell, thank you. I'm hearing one nomination then by Howell, of Howell, which I wholeheartedly support. These are 3 or 4 meetings through the year, are the Synod meetings. They're gatherings of people from the Meidionydd Synod, wherein we hear some of the life of the church in this area. And the Darson Conference is an annual event in October, which speaks to us of some of the life of the diocese as well. If anybody else would like to nominate or be nominated, please do let us know now. Otherwise, we have just a single representative to be nominated now, which is all I'm seeing. So could you show if you would be happy for Howell to be our representative there? Please do raise your hand in whatever way you can. Thank you. That's good. Anybody against? Apart from Howell himself, who can vote against himself if he wishes. No, that's good. Thank you. So Howell, you have been duly appointed to that role. What I would encourage is that through the year, as those synods and Darson Conference details change and are more likely to happen, that the MAC bear in mind that it might be good for others to attend that as well. Super. So that one done. We're very nearly through these. It's not going to take us much longer, I promise. Ooh, Ministry Area Treasurer. I see trepidation on Edith's face. We don't appoint a Ministry Area Treasurer. The MAC appoints the Treasurer, but it does so to any nomination from the annual Vestry meeting. Edith, would you be happy to continue in this role?
I would, if people are happy for me to continue. So by mutual consent, if that's okay.
I don't think using the word happy is appropriate. Ecstatic might be, so that's good. Does anybody else want to volunteer to be the treasurer?
Please do.
No, what's that? A lot of people shaking their heads. That's good. In which case, does the nomination of Edith meet your support? Are you willing to nominate Edith to the MAC for them to appoint? Oh, 2 hands from Helen. Yeah. Enthusiastic hands from others. This is good. I'm seeing it has your support. I'm very, very grateful to you for that, Edith. We will nominate you to the MAC and they will hopefully appoint you.
Thank you.
Gift Aid Secretary, Fred has served in that role for a very good number of years and has done a wonderful job doing it. I haven't heard from Fred whether he either is or isn't willing to continue. Has anybody heard from Fred? I'm not seeing so. That's fine. In which case, I'd like to suggest that we invite Fred to continue in that role. And if he doesn't want to, then of course he can withdraw from it. Would Fred continuing in that role meet with your support? Can I ask you to show? Again, I'm seeing hands. This is good. This is how elections should work in the church. If only you could elect your vicar, I'd be out on my ear, wouldn't I? For making meetings run on. What I'm going to suggest is that for this, which is the appointment of wardens, that we delegate that to the MAC this year, just because I think there's a bit of questioning to go on, and there's a mistake in there. I apologise. I've not properly edited this from previous years. We should have a line of wardens from Eglwys y Bont there, and we shouldn't have a line from Botanog. That is me copying and pasting the blank form from previous years. So I apologise for that. That's a mistake. Can I suggest that we defer this to the MAC to do? Is everybody happy with that? Because I think we need to have more wide-reaching conversations with that. Is Does anybody not want it to happen that way? Do speak now. Nobody's saying so. So if you're happy, we'll defer that for the MAC to do. I think that leaves those people who are currently there in place. And lastly, by way of appointments, we need to appoint an independent examiner. And we have in the past very gratefully received the services of Ian Grundy. He wasn't able to do it for us for 2019, but he has done it incredibly well for us and simply received a gift for doing so rather than any payment. So we're very grateful to him for doing so. It is not a legal requirement on us to have this done, but it is very good practice. So can I suggest that we appoint Ian Grundy once again as our independent examiner? Or does anybody have any other suggestions? I'm seeing support for Ian to do that. Anybody else want to support Ian in that role? Grateful to you all. Thank you. So we appoint Ian in that role as well. I can now take that off our screen. That's good. We're nearly flying through this now, or maybe not. I don't know. We're at least going through it. Good. Let me just bring us slightly on. Literally a couple of things left to share with you, and then there's an opportunity for you to bring up anything you want to. I appreciate it's gone 9 o'clock, so thank you for your time. So I want to give you an update on the reordering project in St David's, which we have alluded to earlier in the financial report, and we've shared somewhat of this information publicly through this last year, but this is the official opportunity to do so. So we've done a lot of work preparing a project to reorder St David's Church in Nevin, ready for it to be used in the future as a hub church within this ministry area. A very exciting project was put together by a group including Peter Ray, our architect, and we're very grateful to Peter for all the work that he's done on that, and it really has produced a splendid plan which you will have seen and had the opportunity to investigate and talk about. There is, however, a very difficult place that we've reached on this, and that is because in spite of what we referred to earlier by way of our investments having bounced back after the pandemic, at the point in which the pandemic struck, we were seeking permission to just go ahead with this and to spend that money, and also to work with the diocese on their roughly two-thirds contribution to the cost of that project. However, we reached that point as the pandemic arrived, and we also reached it as the final costings came in for that project, which were significantly higher than we were anticipating. We had secured agreement for funding up to a certain amount, and the anticipated cost came in quite a bit higher than that. These things do often happen, don't they? And with the two things happening together, we've reached the position whereby the diocese does not feel, the Diocesan Council, the Diocesan Board of Finance doesn't feel that it would be appropriate to enact that support at this particular moment and put that project actually into traction and to make it happen. Whether or not, where that leaves the project is very, very complicated. I mentioned that our investments have bounced back, but we don't know whether that bouncing back is a fragile one or not. And we're not in a position to decide, let's just quickly withdraw all of that straight away. That wouldn't be necessarily the sensible thing to do. We need to take advice on that. But also, we were only contributing far less than the lion's share towards the cost of that project. And so we very much need to work along with the diocese in determining the way forwards for that, and they need to, of course, have a diocesan perspective on this, to look across not just Madryn and what we're doing, but what they're seeking to support across the whole diocese. So the MAC have heard numerous updates and reports to that effect, and what I'd basically like to share with you at this point is that that project is then effectively on pause. It's on pause because of those financial reasons, but it's also on pause because it wasn't very practicable to go ahead with it at this point anyway. So there's a number of reasons behind that. But what isn't the case is that that project is dead in the water. It doesn't mean that it definitely will be resurrected and return and will happen, but nor does it mean that it definitely won't. Quite the percentage of certainty of it happening, I wish I could tell you. I don't think it's very high, but it's definitely not zero. and what we hope will happen in the near future. And I'm about to talk about the vacancy you're about to experience, but during that vacancy and very soon into the new incumbency that will follow me, is that the diocese and the Ministerial Council, and therefore Madryn, will be in strong consultation as to what is an appropriate aspect of that project to take forwards. There is value in the project still, and all of the money that we've expended on it in architects' fees and mechanical and electrical engineering work, reports, surveys, all that kind of stuff, all of that retains its value for a significant period of time. It's all useful and usable, and whilst there will be some work needed if the project is to go ahead to update it, and there'll be expenditure to make it updated, it still retains a lot of its value. We would not be needing to start again from scratch if suddenly over at some point in the next couple of years it became possible for that project to go ahead again. So the money that has been spent, the value for it is held, but the project is on pause until the diocese, in the form of the Darson Council and the Darson Board of Finance, are able to liaise again with the Ministerial Council to determine its future. I understand that that's not likely to, those conversations aren't likely to happen very imminently because of the great uncertainty in the global picture. But that is the situation in which we do find ourselves. I don't think I've expressed that very eloquently. So if you want to ask questions about it, please do, and I'll do my level best to answer them. Now is your opportunity to do so as the clock ticks past 9:15. Just the point at which to put this in front of you. I'm not seeing anybody wishing to ask on that. It is my fervent hope that even though those conversations won't restart imminently, that there will soon be a kind of an official description of that situation come to the Ministerial Council from the Darson Board of Finance and the Darson Council to clarify that as much as possible, so that you're fully aware of what's going on there. With no one else wanting to speak as far as I see, I move us on to the last substantive item on the agenda, which is an outline of our mission and ministry. This should receive more attention always than it does in these meetings, but there it is. And that starts with changes. Well, goodness, we're aware of them, aren't we? I'll bring that off the screen again to stop distracting you. There are changes afoot in Madryn. Not the most significant changes possible. The most significant changes possible is that every single one of you leave, and that's not happening. What's happening is that Sarah and I are moving on, and it is lovely, Sarah, to still have you here. We thought you had left. We said goodbye. We gave you a gift, and then you came back for a bit, but that's great, isn't it? Sarah's not quite able to start in her new role yet, so having said farewell, she is still here for a little bit longer, but that's okay. But I too have, as you know, been appointed to a new role over on Anglesey in the Bro Tacilio ministry area, and as Helen said, my last Sunday with you will be the 16th of May, and I'll be inducted to the new role on the 7th of June. As you have heard, Bishop Andy is very keen indeed for an appointment to be made as vicar and incumbent of Madryn very soon, and conversations have already started. A profile is already being worked upon by Helen and Howell, and there will be opportunity for members of the MAC and members of Madryn to contribute to that. If you want to speak to either Helen or Howell about what you think should be in the parish profile and the job description for my replacement, you are welcome to do so. Helen and Howell do not shrink away from that at all, do you? I just want to confirm that. Helen is in agreement with that, and Howell, even though we can't see his screen, is nodding as well. They would love to hear from you.
Yeah, you can see me now?
We can. I can see you, but not everyone can. But we can hear you. That's right, isn't it?
Yeah.
Helen and Howell, do you both want to just chip in at this point and speak to that?
Wel, sy'n ni'n falch iawn os oes gennych chi unrhyw beth i ddweud. All contributions are welcomed. Any points, anything that you want to raise. Susan has already done so. Diolch yn fawr iawn i Susan. Pidwch â bod yn gyndyn. You all know where I live, or phone numbers and emails, and yeah, just contact, please, please, please.
And Helen, I think that goes for you as well. Is that right?
Yep, indeed. Any comments that would help us as we write the profile or as we finish it, as we talk with Archdeacon Andrew, and particularly because one of the things we have to do is work out how we cover services during the time that we're without a vicar. So it's not just about the process of appointment, it's about what happens in the interim between Richard leaving and the next person coming. And obviously, we won't be able to do everything we used to do. So any thoughts on that would be helpful, although it is down to Archdeacon Andrew. It's his responsibility to oversee that. So at the end of the day, it's not down to us, totally.
Mae gennym ni gyfarfod gyda Andrew wythnos nesa. Tuesday morning, I think. Yeah, is our next meeting with him. Yeah, diolch.
Helen Howell, diolch yn fawr iawn. That's good to hear, and please do take them up on that. Please do speak to them about it in coming weeks, so that your voice is heard in that. It does, of course, put things in a specific context, and this isn't, I appreciate it isn't a good time for such changes to take place while things are otherwise uncertain. And in the context of our worship, just to repeat something which I shared during a recent online service, that we will be having some services in person during May. The restrictions are changing. Not the restrictions on church. It's been possible for us to hold services all the way through this last set of restrictions, but it's been in the hands of the MAC to decide. Well, the MAC have given consent for some in-person services to take place again, and in the 2nd, 9th and 16th of May, I, along with Sarah and some others helping to steward, will be conducting some services within Madryn. Where they will be, when and how is going to be announced within the next few days, because the rules are finally changing, I understand, on outdoor worship, on outdoor meetings. And the reason that's significant is that, in my mind, it should always have been more possible to meet outdoors than indoors. But with the weather as it is at the moment and the opportunities that presents, and what we know about the importance of fresh air in terms of a lack of infection and catching the virus, I think some opportunity for something outdoors might make it more possible for those who haven't felt able to come along and worship with us in person when we were doing so in church, might be able to do so outdoors. So I'm hoping that something along those lines might be possible during those 3 Sundays in May when I'm still around, and subsequently there will be appropriate announcements as to what will happen once I have left, for how worship will continue. But what I wanted to say at this point about all of that is, as I said at the start, please don't simply anticipate that everything is at some point going to go back to how it was. That's not to say, here's an opportunity to get rid of a load of stuff. No, that's not what I mean. What I do mean, though, is that here is an opportunity to look at what is right to do next. I was recently part of a conversation where 4 questions were being asked, and they're slightly similarly worded, so I'm going to try to remember them properly. It was what have we picked up in the last 12 months that we should now put down? What have we started to do in the last 12 months that we shouldn't do anymore? The second question, what have we put down over the last 12 months that we should now pick up again? What have we had to let go of during the restrictions that we can now do once again? What is right to do? The next question was, what have we picked up that we should keep? What new things have we started to do that we shouldn't let go of? And the fourth question was, what have we let go of that we should never pick up again? What things would be inappropriate to continue with? And all 4 of those questions are important. They're not just important in terms of our worship, but they're important in terms of all of our life together as the church in this place. So please have them in your heart and mind, but understand that there will be questions asked and decisions made in the future that will be in response in some way, shape or form to the way those 4 questions are asked and framed. it seems deeply unlikely to me, even as I move on, that even what we had got to in 2019 is the pattern that would have been here in 2021, 22 anyway. And it would be wrong of us to just say, well, let's just replicate that again. We've learnt so much in the last 7 years about being church together and the value of doing so more together. But we've also seen and retained the value in being local and offering worship in different ways, in different places, to different communities. What we need to do is learn how to balance those two things of great value together, and not simply to replicate what doesn't need to be replicated, but to reproduce what does need to be reproduced. That's what I'd like to leave you with on that. In terms of our pastoral care, I'm delighted, and it's lovely to have Mary in the meeting. I think Mary's still here at least. Mary, I want to thank you as I go for the part that you played in setting up Mary Moore. I'm grateful to Mary Ray for many things. Mary Moore, I'm grateful to you for the part you played, Mary, in developing the pastoral care team. Which has received various levels, again, of need and call upon its time, but also various levels of support from me for the lack of that when it's been there. I apologise. But what I'm delighted to go away from here leaving is a group of people whose commitment to pastoral care in this ministry area is undoubted, and their skills in doing so are undoubted as well. And to add into that, the addition of Caffi Colled, which Sarah has pioneered and developed and grown from concerned humble beginnings to now a thing that is of deep value to a group of people, and growing in its reach to others who are recognising that the experience of grief, the experience of loss, whilst it is common to us all, is different for us all, and isn't something to be ignored, is something to be attended to, and indeed tended where necessary. So those two things together, the pastoral care team and Caffi Colled, will be continuing, even though Sarah and I are leaving. I'm delighted about that. Madryn was the other joy of the last 7 years here, the highlight of the last 7 years here, and that's kind of an umbrella term for all that we did that was an attempt to reach children, young people and families in this ministry area. So included in that would be Paned Pnawn and Teulu Tut and various other initiatives at seasonal times of year, Hal and Have and beer and carols and all that kind of stuff came under that approach. And whilst the establishment of that team isn't quite as strong as we might hope it had been, what I'm delighted to say is that I see across the ministry area a recognition of the absolute vital importance of that aspect of our ministry, and the skill and concern and love within people within this ministry area for that work to continue in whatever way, shape or form you and your new incumbents seek to take it forwards. And lastly, a mention of buildings, if I may, and with this we are coming to a close. Thank you so much for your time. A mention of buildings. We are used to something called quinquennial reports, aren't we? Which are inspections of the places that we use to be the focuses of our ministry to the communities that we serve. Well, that process of 5 yearly inspections of our buildings has been slightly adapted so that along with what we requested about 6 years ago now, that they all be done at once. Well, that is now the pattern across the diocese. Should we say that Madryn started it? I think we should. So now all churches in the ministry area are inspected at the same time. The inspection that's made of them is more intense and more rigorous, and the report that's produced on them is again more detailed and more rigorous. And at the start of this year, we had a diocesan appointed architect, Andrew Kepchik, come and inspect each of our church buildings. And in the next couple of months, the Ministry Area Council, presumably now with the Archdeacon, is going to receive those reports and be able to consider the nature of the condition of each of our buildings. But I want to add into that whilst there will be questions that brings up and concerns that are raised from that, and there will be decisions to come from that, we must remember always that the buildings we have available to us in our ministry area are not simply counted by the places with the word saint in front of them. That is not it. We are a living building joined together in Christ as his body, and the homes we live in, the community, places in the community that we visit, the open air spaces which we inhabit are places that are part of Madryn. And so whatever the future of those buildings which we know and love is, and I hope there is a future for as many of them as is possible to do, there is an extended a list of places that are places through which the mission and ministry of Madryn is to be experienced. The church in this place is to be experienced and worked out. So please do continue to bear that in mind as those conversations develop in the near future. That was what I wanted to say on that, and I'm now very, very willing to hear any comments or questions on that. But I do recognise what time it is. Does anybody want to say anything at this point? I'm not seeing any. I'm grateful to you for your attention for that. We've come to the end of our agenda with the opportunity for any other business. Is there anything that anybody would like us to consider at this point? And if you don't want us to discuss it now because it's so late, is there anything that you would like the MAC to consider in coming weeks? You can make either suggestion. Please do show if there's something you'd like us to talk about. I'm not seeing any, so I'm grateful for that. The date of the next meeting is the final thing then on our agenda before we pray together. That will not be set now because it's not sensible to do that because we will need to respond hopefully in 2022 to the opportunity to do this in person. So let's not set ourselves a date at this point, but the new incumbent and the MAC will correspond on that and liaise on that, and I hope that's okay with you. The MAC are meeting very soon as well before I leave to make some final considerations. I'm going to take that away, and then I'm going to ask you to turn, if you've got that document in front of you, that one which had the agenda on, the very top, and let me bring down to the bottom of it, and we will have then on the screen for us the collect that has been written to reflect the life of Saint Madryn, after whom we are named. So I'm going to pray this, and then I'm going to ask us to say together the Lord's Prayer. Dduw tregoddol, a bydd unig fab wybod beth oedd gwir gariad, tyner mam a thad. Fe alwais dyforwyn Madryn i ofalu am ei theulu ac i feithrin ei phlant, yng ngwybodaeth a chariad dy ffydd. Adeilada deulu'r eglwys ac aelwyd y ffydd mewn gras a gobaith, fel y daw pob cenhedlaeth i ddirnad dyfnder dy ffyddlondeb diddiwedd. Trwy'r un Iesu Grist, ein brawd a'n ffrind, sy'n fyw ac yn ternasu gyda thi a'r ysbryd glân, yn un Duw, yn awr ac am byth. Amen. Shall we also pray together the Lord's Prayer? Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power and the glory, for ever and ever. Amen. Bless you all. Thank you for sharing this time together. Thank you for your attention throughout. We'll just see briefly a very short little thing whereby our name appears. And at that point, I'm going to turn off the live stream. You're very welcome to stay briefly afterwards if you'd like to, just to chat to each other and unmute yourselves. Although I expect to see a flurry of people heading through the virtual door. It would be lovely if you did want to stay and chat. I'll see you in a moment. For those of you watching online, bless you. Thank you for joining us.